the October 3rd, 2023 Planning Board meeting here at the City of Summerside. Couple of just quick little housekeeping notes. One, there are a series of meetings here tonight. There's 4 meetings. The first one has begun and will reconvene. But then there are 3 meetings, the Planning Board, our Committee of the Whole, and then a special council meeting. So in between each one of those, we'll be adjourning the meeting and then starting the second one and taking a break if we need to in between. So I will call for a motion to approve the Planning Board agenda as presented. That would have to come from a member of Planning Board. A reminder, members of Planning Board are Councillor Snow, Duran, Morrison, and myself. Moved by Councillor Snow, second by Councillor Duran. Any opposed to the agenda as presented? Hearing none, the agenda will move forward as presented. We begin all of our meetings with the land acknowledgement, where we acknowledge that the land upon which we are gathered is the traditional and unceded territory of the Abogway Mi'kmaq First Nation. Abogway is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship, and it was Treaty Day here in Prince Edward Island 2 days ago, October 1st. We pay our respects to the indigenous Mi'kmaq people who have occupied this island for over 12,000 years. At this point, I will call for a conflict of interest declaration with any member of council or any member of planning board with respect to the items on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on, and then I get to hand it over to Councillor Duran, the chair of planning board. Councillor.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Your Worship. One and only item on for this evening, a major variance application for 433 Central Street. The purpose of the major variance is to allow a floor area ratio variance for 2 proposed 60-unit apartment buildings. Background, an application was received from 103112 PEI Inc., Doug Waugh, to construct 2 60-unit apartment buildings on a vacant lot, PID number 1136258 at 433 Central Street in the R4 zone. The R4 zone allows a floor area ratio equivalent to 80% of the lot area. And I guess just for explanation, floor area ratio refers to the size of the building square footage in relation to the size of the lot. Is that sort of okay? Yeah. Report. The lot area of the subject property is 10,997 square meters, allowing a floor area ratio of 8,797 square meters. The proposed floor area ratio is 11,131 square meters. The applicant is requesting a 22% variance to the floor area ratio. Justification for variance as required by section 7.2 of the city zoning bylaw SS-15 2007. Council, planning board, and the department officer shall consider the variance against the following tests for justifying a variance. All applicable criteria must be met. A, that the hardship is due to unique physical conditions of the lot or property, including small lot size, irregular lot shape, existing building location on the property, or exceptional topographical conditions which make it impractical to develop in strict conformity with bylaw standards. Exceptional topographical conditions may include, but are not limited to, trees, slope of the land, etc. Staff comment, no, this variance request would not meet this test. The requested variance does not appear to be technical in nature due to a hardship as noted. The lot was created by means of a minor subdivision in June 2021 by the original landowner. The property has changed ownership twice since being subdivided. B, that the proposed variance meets the general intent of the official plan. Staff comment, yes, this variance request would meet this test. The existing lot land use is residential and does not conflict with council's broad residential goals and criteria for location of high-density housing. And with that, there is an extract from the official plan from page 47. Ensure housing affordability and diversity. As development and change occurs, we must strive to contain Summerside's cost of living and promote sustainable economic development that provides sufficient jobs. An affordable community can only exist if we make sure people that work in Summerside can afford to live here. We will need to monitor the supply of affordable housing options and provide opportunities for all segments of our population. And from page 79, residential goals. Accommodate the diversified residential needs of all city residents for different housing types, densities, and forms of tenure, taking into account present housing composition, changing age and family needs, needs for affordable housing, and the special needs of the elderly and disabled. C, that the proposed variance meets the general intent of the zone. Staff comment, yes, this variance request would meet this test. The proposed variance is specific to the floor area ratio. Other standards, such as building setbacks, lot coverage, and parking, meet the development standards of the R4 zone. There was a building height variance of 10% approved by the development officer for one of these proposed buildings in August 2023. D, that the proposed variance would not impact negatively on adjacent properties or on the essential character of the surrounding neighborhood, including taking into consideration any comments from neighbors. Staff comment, yes, this variance request would meet this test. 15 letters were sent to 14 properties within 30 meters of the boundaries of the subject property. The deadline for written comments was September 28th, 2023. Upon submission of this report, written comments in opposition of the variance were received from Juanita Morrison, 436 Central Street. The variance will not impact the required setbacks on the existing neighbors. Central Street is a collector street, and the property is adjacent to the north of Granville Street shopping area to the east and a strip of single-family homes along the west side of Central Street. The east side of Central Street near the Salvation Army Church to the Toyota dealership is zoned high-density R4, which the subject property conforms to the general area. The proposed variance does not impact the essential character of the residential neighborhood on Central Street or the Granville Street commercial area. The development officer received a call from Owen McDonald, 421 Central Street, who also owns 427 Central Street, requesting a site plan showing the proposed building locations. Mr. McDonald submitted an email in opposition to the variance. Kent Walsh, 443 Central Street, met with the development officer at City Hall to review the site plan. Mr. Walsh wondered if the developer would consider reversing the building locations and indicated he would speak to one of the developers, as Mr. Walsh is working for this developer on Simmons Avenue for a 60-unit apartment building under construction. The city's zoning bylaw provides regulations for the uses of land and location of buildings on a property. It is difficult for zoning bylaw provisions to take into account all circumstances, such as pertaining to lot sizes, lot shapes, pie-shaped lots, property line, yard setbacks, or topographical conditions, which may impact the development of a particular property. The hardship for variance cannot be an economic one, but must be technical in nature. The size and shape of the property or the design of a building or project may prevent the owner from fully meeting all of the provisions of the zoning bylaw. In such cases, a variance is a mechanism which is used to provide some degree of flexibility and discretion in applying the strict provisions of the bylaw. As a general principle, a variance must maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. It should never be used as a mechanism to circumvent or frustrate the intent of the bylaw. For example, a variance cannot be used to create a land use or to fully eliminate a required yard setback. Any person who is dissatisfied by a decision of council or the development officer made under the zoning bylaw may appeal to the Island Regulatory and Appeals Commission within 21 days of the decision in accordance with the Planning Act. Staff review. Staff do not support the floor area ratio variance of 22%. Two proposed 60-unit apartment buildings at 433 Central Street, as the variance does not appear to be technical in nature due to a hardship. The applicant was aware of the lot size upon purchase. While staff do not support the application under the current bylaw, staff would like to note the floor area ratio allowance is used to regulate the building size, aside from setbacks, building height, and parking requirements. In this case, the buildings meet or exceed the setbacks and the parking. The same building placement, less one floor on each building, would meet the floor area ratio. The allowable floor area ratio was changed from 60% of the lot area to 80% of the lot area under the 2019 zoning bylaw review to reflect the density at that time. Council may want to revisit the percentage of allowable lot area in the upcoming zoning bylaw review to allow more density based on the recent housing demands since the 2019 review was carried out. As per section 5.10, part B3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward for council for a final decision. And the planning board recommendation, the application from 103112 PEI Inc. for PID number 1136258, requesting a 22% variance to the floor area ratio allowing a proposed floor area ratio of 11,131 square meters, whereas the City of Summerside zoning bylaw allows a floor area ratio of 8,797 square meters in the R4 zone, be recommended to be approved by council. It was moved by myself and seconded by Deputy Mayor Snow. There are also few things attached that I guess are available to anyone that would like to see them, but there's also letters that typically we would read into the minutes, so I can carry on with those, or we can discuss before doing that, whatever.
So are you going to continue reading, or have you read everything in that?
The only things I have to read are there's some letters that were sent in from different organizations and people that typically we would read into the record at this time, so I can do that now. Appendix A is the variance, just the application that was actually submitted, which is part of the package and can be downloaded online. Appendix B, just some letters. I'll just read them in order. First one is from Andrews of Summerside. To whom this may concern, we would like to express our support to 103112 PEI Inc. on the proposed 120-unit apartment building on Central Street in Summerside. As we have 2 community care and nursing facilities in Summerside, our staff are always looking for reliable and affordable housing in this area, close to our facilities. Regards, Greg MacDougall, Director, Real Estate, Andrews Senior Care. Second is from Summerside Chrysler Dodge. We would like to express our support for the 120-unit development on Central Street by 103113 PEI Inc. and the density variance to allow for such a project to begin. This project will create many jobs, grow our city, help the housing problem, and have a large positive impact on the City of Summerside. The City of Summerside is growing. The housing/labor market must keep up. The movie Field of Dreams from 1989 best summed this up. If you build it, they will come. And that is from Brody Ellis, President, Summerside Chrysler Dodge. Next one is from Walker Avenue Commercial Estates. Walker Avenue Commercial Estates is in support of 103112 PEI Inc.'s 120-unit development off Central Street. This development will help in providing additional capacity to the city's affordable housing that is greatly needed. This will assist local businesses, provide economic growth in the area, and assist in attracting more workers to the Summerside area. This development will, in my opinion, enhance Summerside. Regards, Wayne Thompson. Next letter from McCain Produce, Inc. McCain Produce, Inc. would like to offer this letter of support for the proposed 120-unit development on Central Street in Summerside, PEI. We and many other employers in the City of Summerside struggle to get employees to staff our facility. This proposed unit would be a positive step forward to address the housing issue in the city. The largest obstacle when recruiting new staff is the lack of affordable housing in Summerside. Most of our new staff are from different countries, and affordable housing is key to get them to the city and stay. Kind regards, Jason Ramsey, General Manager. Next letter is from Colbeck's Home Hardware Building Center. We would like to add our support in this letter for 103112 PEI Inc.'s planned 120-unit development on Central Street in Summerside. In our industry, we are very well versed in the shortage of housing available across PEI and especially in the City of Summerside. With employee shortages across the province, it is hard to attract new candidates when there are not any options for housing. We are seeing record levels of low occupancy rates in the city, and this is hindering the growth of the city. 103112 PEI Inc.'s planned development will add much-needed housing inventory to help with the shortages and ensure more people have a home and room for new people to call our great city home. Please consider allowing the variance to allow this project to continue. We feel this will be a great addition to our city and take a big jump towards housing for more people in our city. Thank you, Dwayne McDonald, President, Dealer Owner, Colbeck's Home Hardware Building Center. From Green Diamond Equipment, concerning 103112 PEI Inc.'s proposed 120-unit apartment buildings, we very much support this proposal on Central Street. In addition to providing needed housing, the project will help grow the population in the city, not to mention increase revenue through construction work. Additionally, employers in the area are struggling to find employees due in part to lack of housing. We are one of these employers. Certainly hope the City Council supports this variance. Sincerely, John Redden, President and Chief Executive Officer. From Prince Edward Island Mutual Insurance Company, I'm writing on behalf of PEI Mutual to express our support for the proposed 120-unit development by 103-112 PEI Inc. on Central Street in Summerside. We believe that this project has the potential to benefit the community and addresses some of the key issues that our city is currently facing. The plan to construct two 60-unit apartment buildings serves as a step forward to address the current housing shortage in the area. The creation of jobs that this project brings, as well as opportunity for growth and investment, will benefit businesses in the area and the community at large. PEI Mutual supports 103-112 PEI Inc.'s proposed development and encourages your favorable consideration. Sincerely, Craig Noonan, Chief Executive Officer. From Cavendish Farms, I am writing this letter in support of 103-112 PEI Inc.'s 120-unit development on Central Street and the associated density variance they are requesting. As one of the largest local area employers, the lack of housing, and in particular affordable housing, has made attracting and retaining employees to the Summerside area a challenge. Developments like the one proposed will help ensure businesses are able to continue to operate successfully in the future. Sincerely, Bill Meisner, General Manager. Just one more. From Township Chevrolet Buick GMC. We would like to express our support for 103-112 PEI Inc.'s request for density variance regarding the 120-unit development on Central Street. We feel this project will be of benefit to the community and businesses by creating jobs and aiding in the growth of the city, while also having a positive impact on the housing shortage. Sincerely, Adam Toner, President. Now there is one written letter. It is from Juanita Morrison. It is scanned and it's sort of faded a bit, but I'll try my best here to read it. I most strongly object to the proposed 22% variance requested by a developer to increase the floor plan of two high-density buildings in our current residential zone. This will affect all residents on the street, not just for properties within 30 meters of proposed area. Why have those residents not been notified? There is currently too much traffic on our street to the extent that it is a challenge to even get out of our driveways. Adding 120 units with up to 240 vehicles in our area will greatly affect traffic flow. Buildings of this height will block our view and decrease the enjoyment of our properties and will be an eyesore. Similar to the Portside building on Water Street, our residential area is not zoned for such high density development and would increase the traffic problems that we have now. Yours truly, Juanita Morrison. Another submission from Owen McDonald. Good morning, Linda. Just sending back my reply on the variance application submitted by 103-112 PEI Inc. We are not in favor of giving them a 22% variance on this project. We are also opposed to the fact that they even get approval to put two 60 units in this area. We have no problem with units the same as what is off of Pope Road extension, basically in behind our properties. These 4 or 5-story units will knock down our property value and also invade our privacy. All one has to do is look at what they're building on Simmons Avenue. There is lots of issues that can be talked about concerning this project: traffic, noise. I can go on all day here, but enough said. Owen McDonald Construction. And the final letter is from Mary Andrews, 428 Central Street. I am replying to the letter I received dated September 15th, 2023 regarding the variance application to 433 Central Street, PID number 1136258, where I am objecting to the proposed variance. While the property is zoned R4, a 22% increase in variance will add a significant negative impact to the landscaping of the street. With owning a residential property just 190 meters down from the roundabout and straight across from 433 Central Street, currently I wait for dozens of vehicles to pass by before I can enter the street from my driveway. Central Street, as it is now, is far too busy for any apartment building, much less two oversized apartment buildings. The intersection on Walker Street / Central Street is often backlogged with traffic, as is the entrance/exit to the Butcher Block. Adding in an entrance/exit onto Central Street for two 60-unit apartment buildings is not logical, especially just below a roundabout in the middle of a residential area. Two 60-unit apartments will without a doubt decrease property values, increase noise pollution, and decrease privacy for any current homeowners. 433 Central Street is not the location for two 60-unit apartment buildings. City residents, not just residents within a 60-meter radius, should be informed of this decision, as it will have a negative impact on the street for all citizens. Regards, Mary Andrews. And that is that. So we can go into a discussion if we like, or, yes.
Appendix A, the applicant chose to expand their rationale for the
Okay.
application form. That application form is there. They, some verbiage, they provided their own verbiage on, in Appendix A as to their reasoning for the,
Yep. The variance justifications?
Sure.
So that is, yeah, okay, I will read that for sure. So this is directly from the applicant. Okay. So, I just want to make sure I don't leave anything out. Yeah, Appendix A, okay. Variance justifications. So this comes from the applicant, the developer. As per section 7.2 of the zoning bylaw SS-15, the justifications for the variance are as follows. A, as currently zoned and in accordance with bylaw SS-15, a single four-story, 120-unit building with a footprint of approximately 23,696 square feet is allowed to be constructed on the site. And I'm just going to stop there. I did read it in meters earlier. But was that I'm just thinking off the top of my head, was the conversion to meter, like, was that right, or was it miscommunicated as the same number but in meters?
It shouldn't really matter for reading this in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to, okay. 120-unit building with a footprint of about 23,696 square feet is allowed to be constructed on the site. This variance application is not to increase the number of units on this property, but rather to change the configuration of how those units are achieved to better suit the site and surrounding properties. Due to the physical location, orientation, and topography of the property, constructing two separate buildings, each with a footprint of approximately 11,903 square feet, creates a less congested site by eliminating an architecturally undesirable large single-mass building. Making the site less congested allows for larger setbacks to the neighboring properties. Being able to strategically place two smaller footprint buildings more naturally in the existing topography will significantly reduce the amount of imported shale and gravels required to make for a more aesthetically appealing site. Lastly, it also allows the units to be larger with more common space, making them more suitable and comfortable for a wider demographic of tenants, such as families and young professionals. B, increasing the allowable floor area ratio on this lot supports many of the goals and policies laid on in the official plan. The following points reference directly from the City of Summerside's official plan. From Section 2.1, Population and Development Trends, Council Policies to promote a sustainable economy to support population growth. The current climate of population growth and vacancy rate is not sustainable. The injection of shovel-ready, affordable housing provided by this project will help bridge the gap by providing 120 units into the market on a relatively short timeline. From Section 3.0, our overall vision. We want to live in a community that provides housing, jobs, services, health, and safety to all our residents. This development will provide housing that has convenient access to services, jobs, and health care for residents. With the increased housing in the area, the business case for others to establish new businesses is improved, leading to more services and job opportunities. From the same section, we want services and shopping close to where we live. With the main commercial hub of Granville Street in the backyard of this development, it is hard to get better and closer access to services and shopping. Many necessities and amenities are within walking distance. And from the same section again, we want a broader mix of housing and affordability choices. The development will establish high-density apartment-style housing on the north end of Central Street. With its proximity to the commercial hub, It is in character with the surrounding area, with 100% of the units meeting the definition of affordability by the CMHC. It also provides residents with more choice in what type of housing they want. From section 3.2, our guiding principles, social responsibility and inclusion. Create diverse communities with accessibility to affordable housing, education, healthcare, and public amenities for all citizens. This development creates substantial access to affordable housing, and higher density neighborhoods tend to promote more interaction between diverse demographics. 2 buildings on the site creates more of a community feel on the site, and allowing for units of varying sizes allows a more diverse set of tenants, elderly, families, young professionals, students, etc., to occupy the buildings. Walkable neighborhoods and transportation choices. With the sidewalk already in place on the proposed development side of Central Street, this development contributes to the goal of creating a walkable neighborhood. Many amenities and necessities are within walking distance, as well as significant employers such as the PEI Tech Center. Residents can walk to work, to shop, or receive professional services. And from the same section, priorities, affordable housing, and accessible community. Those 2 guiding responsibilities were identified as being priorities of the City of Summerside. This development addresses both by providing 100% affordable housing units and a minimum of 10% of the constructed units being deemed accessible. Also, all public spaces and common areas of the development will be accessible. Environmental responsibility and sustainability. Mix compatible land uses close to each other. Mixing compatible uses such as housing, retail, business, and recreational opportunities creates vibrant and diverse communities. This development adds high-density housing to the existing retail, business, and recreational opportunities offered in the area, contributing to a vibrant and diverse community. As mentioned above, increasing the allowable floor area ratio for the site allows for units of varying sizes and a more diverse set of tenants. Elderly, families, young professionals, students, etc., can occupy the buildings, creating a community. Design communities and development to minimize air, water, and soil pollution, reduce land consumption and waste. The buildings constructed as part of this development will be net zero ready. Solar panels, high-efficiency heat pumps, and improved insulation are just a few of the features that will allow this development to reduce its carbon footprint. Priorities: greenhouse gas emission reduction, promote water use reduction, and efficient land use. These items are identified as being priorities of the City of Summerside. As demonstrated above, this development addresses these priorities. Section 3.4, sustainability. The objective in this section is to foster growth strategies that focus on making Summerside a sustainable community. The council policies. 1 is to promote higher density development, so land and existing infrastructure is used efficiently, and non-private automobile transportation options like public transit can be supported. This development and others like it could create a significant rider base for local public transit. By building and increasing density, the existing land and infrastructure is used and services more efficiently and enjoyed by more residents. To promote a range of housing types and forms to accommodate a mix of age and income groups. An increase in floor area ratio would allow for a mix of unit sizes that would accommodate a more diverse set of age and income groups. It allows for larger multi-bedroom units for families and smaller, more affordable single-bedroom units. This project will create high-density, affordable apartment-style housing which can accommodate diverse demographics. The accessible, universal, and adaptive units provide dignified housing for people with disabilities of all types. The adaptive units provide an opportunity for residents to age in place. With the drastic increase in housing costs over the past few years, young professionals are limited in the options for secure, affordable housing. Purchasing a home is no longer a realistic option for many residents, and they rely on rentals for much longer than previous generations. Encourage less emphasis on the automobile. By building residential units in such close proximity to shopping, schools, employment, and entertainment, residents of this development can be less reliant on automobiles as a primary form of transportation. Walking, biking, and potentially local public transportation become much more viable for those that are able. Section 3.5, functionality. Where did it go? Okay. Objective. To create growth strategies that focus on making Summerside a functional community. The council policies grow as a compact, complete community. Higher density growth capitalizes on land and infrastructure already in place, making it work more efficiently. Developing this particular land parcel would infill vacant land adjacent to the primary commercial center of the city. And ensuring housing affordability and diversity. An increase in floor area ratio would allow for a multi-building community on the parcel. Each building would have a broad mix of sizes and configurations that can appeal to a diverse resident set. This project will create 120 affordable apartment units. Section 3.7.8, smart growth. The City of Summerside plans to use smart growth housing as a means to combat several challenges over the coming years. This development aligns well with the idea of smart growth. Demographics, strong impact on the future demand for housing, such as an aging population, declining household size, declining fertility rates, and cultural and economic diversity. Higher density residential developments create housing stock that appeal to a wide demographic, whether it's students, young professionals, or older individuals looking to downsize. This inherently will promote cultural and economic diversity within the development. With the recent significant increases in housing costs, Summerside's aging population and low vacancy rate, being able to provide affordable housing options is more important than ever. As mentioned before, increased housing costs are driving younger residents to other areas where rentals are more readily available. Rising fuel prices. As demonstrated above, this development appeals to individuals who do not own or wish to become less reliant on an automobile as their primary form of transportation. Employment, amenities, and necessities are easily within active transportation distance. Increased fiscal concerns. As mentioned in the official plan, more dense housing is easier and more cost-effective to service on a per-household basis. Just a couple more paragraphs here. Section 5.0.0, residential city goals. And this is directly from the official plan. Accommodate the diversified residential needs of all city residents for different housing types, densities, and forms of tenure, taking into account present housing composition, changing age and family needs, needs for affordable housing, and the special needs of the elderly and disabled. To promote quality designed residential developments featuring mixes of housing types appropriate to the local area, efficient use of land, and attractive site development, economical but high standard servicing, vehicular and pedestrian accessibility and safety, and adequate recreational space. Concentrate higher density residential development in locations where residents can benefit most from proximity to jobs, facilities, and services as appropriate to their individual needs. These three goals are clearly stated in the official plan, and this development directly addresses them. It will provide quality, designed, affordable, and diverse housing near jobs, facilities, and services with accessible units. It makes efficient use of the land, making economical, high-standard services more achievable. Its location and existing infrastructure provide accessible and safe means for pedestrians. And getting back to those points, so we're on C. The lot is currently zoned R4, high-density residential, and does not require a change in zoning use. This project meets the intent of the zone by providing high-density residential in an area that is zoned for that use. And finally, D. By allowing the variance on floor area ratio and constructing two buildings rather than one larger building, it allows for more green space and larger setbacks to neighboring properties, reducing the impact on current residents in the area. The two building layout versus the one large building opens the site up more, making it fit better in the surrounding landscape. Also, by increasing the floor area ratio allows for a broader mix of unit sizes and types that can introduce a more diverse range of occupants into the area. Letters of support for the increased floor area ratio are attached to this application in Appendix B. Area businesses and organizations are having extreme difficulties recruiting and retaining staff due to the unavailability of suitable housing with larger units and common space that is suitable for their families. And Appendix B was the letters that we previously read. So thank you for making me aware of Appendix A. I am in severe pain in my throat, but we're okay.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. With the planning board recommendation moved by Councillor Duran, seconded by Councillor Snow now on the floor, it's the opportunity for members of planning board and also members of council to ask any questions that they may have. I'll open the floor to members of council. Councillor Snow, you got your light on. You might as well start.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to start by, I guess, thanking the applicant. In the, I don't know how many years I've been here, 5+ years, this is probably one of the most detailed, complete applications and justification on the applicant's behalf on why they feel the variance should be warranted. Also, I think it's important to recognize the significance of the Appendix B attached letters from what I would look at as the significant employers in the area, how important development is for these businesses, which often we see the opposite. We see a gallery full of people speaking out against it for various reasons, whether or not it's traffic and so forth. There are some letters here, and I guess there's a couple of things I want to ask regarding some of the things that were brought up in letters from written submissions. So there's one from Juanita Morrison, and she references that this is not an area for high density, but in fact this is already zoned high density, correct? Okay, and then another one in here references it being a residential area. When I think of that area, I think of it as mixed use, not residential, quite the opposite. Right beside this property, there's a C2 property. On the backside, there's tons of commercial. Just down the street, there's tons of commercial. So I guess I'm asking staff, would this be considered a residential area as stated in the letter? Or area with some residential and commercial? How would you consider this area?
I guess we all can speak wish. This lot itself is definitely R4.
Mm-hmm.
The entire side of the east side of the street is residential. Down to the Toyota dealership, there is Salvation Army. It's more high density residential behind it. From the map, it's clear there is the whole area is a mix. There is some commercial, as you mentioned, the entire, I'll say, west side of Granville Street Mall District, all the way to across Walker is all commercial surrounding that neighborhood. So it's definitely, this lot itself is zoned R4. It's a lot of residential all around it, as well as a mix in the very near future, very near vicinity.
Okay.
I can just add, I guess going back to 1998 when the original official plan was done, this area was zoned as R4. So the vision has always been high density residential, and it just hasn't, developed until I guess now.
Sorry, just a few more. I have lots of notes here, but usually I don't have this many notes, but this one's definitely interesting. So it mentions there's a proposed 120 units. If we allow the variance, there'll be 120 units in 2 buildings, but it also states that they can currently build 120 units in 1 building. So that is factual. Like if they wanted to proceed with 120 units, one building on that lot, they could meet the setbacks and so forth.
It would come down, we're not debating the number of units, we're debating the total square footage as Councillor Drawn had started. There may be 120 units, but they would obviously have to be smaller units that's being proposed in these 2 buildings. So the number of units could be there.
Could still be
We're just
120
debating
units.
the number of square footage of living space in the entire buildings.
Okay, perfect. And if the variance was approved, they meet the parking requirements. There's no increase in the number of units per se, because they could have 120 units, just smaller units.
They're required to have 60 spaces per building, 1 unit, and they're providing on their plans 68 per building.
Okay.
So they're meeting or slightly exceeding the required number of parking.
Okay. And so it also states that the building location actually benefits the neighboring properties based on some setbacks and that sort of, possibly exceeds setback requirements?
I think it was in B of the variance notation.
Yeah, I think it might have been,
For more
actually, it might have been in
green
your
space.
guys' comments coming on the end, saying the current,
So you can see on the plan here, the red outlined area,
yeah,
that is the setbacks.
Mhm.
So you can see that they're not up against those setbacks, they are exceeding them.
okay. All right, I think that's all the questions I have for now, thank you.
Councillor MacDougall?
Thank you, Your Worship. Aaron, the allowable floor area ratio was changed from 60 to 80%? What, I'm just wondering what that is in other municipalities. Is 80 the norm, or does it need to be higher, or where are we with that? I think that's the,
I'm gonna defer to Thane.
okay.
We're really the only municipality that uses the floor area ratio. Most will do it determined on lot size, so each unit requires a certain lot area, and
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to calculate, you know, from a developer, you know, how many units can I fit in that property, and you say, well, this is how many square feet per unit you need.
Okay.
But we use the floor area ratio, and it works out to be roughly the same density as what Charlottetown would allow.
Is it more stringent, the one we use, than going by the square feet?
No, it works out to be roughly what other municipalities use for, you know, square foot per unit. And so it works out to be the same ratio basically as
Yeah.
what Charlottetown uses. Stratford and Cornwall, a bit less because they are really suburban in nature as far as density.
Yeah. Okay, no, great application. I just, I know we're stuck on that one there, so I just wondered. Thank you.
Councillor Drawn, do you have a comment as your microphone doesn't go off? Okay, yeah, Councillor Drawn. And, yeah, Councillor McColeman, you had your microphone on as well, so maybe after Councillor Drawn, is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, so I certainly struggle having to, you know, if we're basing everything on what we are supposed to base things on, based on the complexity and the details and the thorough application, I really struggle having to let this fall through the cracks on something that I really feel that we're able to work around, like correctly, procedurally. Like this is one of the most thorough, accommodating potential developments that at least I've ever seen before council or before planning board. Some of the things that the residents in opposition have described in their letters, if this development was to go through with all the as of right allowances, I don't think those residents would see much of a difference in terms of the things that they're concerned with. In this case, as the application stated, I think this would even make it more of an appeal to those residents that are against it. And some of those residents are Ward 2 residents, so, I mean, I gotta speak for them as well, but just a question to perhaps CAO Gordon, procedurally, and not necessarily in relation to this specific application, but how would we as a council, if, I guess, planning board was interested in suggesting it, how would we start the process of going from the 80% to a higher, like a 90 or a 100% 50% even? Is that just something that we would have to submit for the next committee meeting and move it through the, because the times are
I think,
now
I think
like
planning board
favoring
could,
more of a higher ratio.
I think, planning board could give staff direction to bring back those draft changes for council's review.
Can we give direction to that this evening? I don't want to sort of blur this,
Yep.
you know, I don't want it to seem like it's just so we can get this through, but we're seeing more and more.
Councillor, what the best option for that might be would be to, when we get to our committee of the whole meeting, you could add an item to the agenda if you wanted to talk about
Sure.
FAR.
Yeah, if we could do that.
And we could
that'd
do
be
that separate and
great.
apart from this.
Just a quick sort of
If it's something
procedural
that's
type
caught your,
thing.
yep.
Anyway, I'll finish up as a planning board member. Hopefully we can, discuss a little further, but I certainly support recommending this to council, so.
Councillor McColeman, you had your light on first, and then Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of Planning Board and council members. The only unfortunate thing is I can't see the developers and the applicants. With that, we should move that podium at some point in the future, not tonight, but it'd be nice to see the folks. Oh, there they go, see? I also wanted to comment with my fellow councillors on the application and the thoroughness that has been provided of information. I think it is one that even if any members of council had questions, I believe that there were a lot of good answers and information that came in your on the Appendix A. So thank you for taking that time. I look at it and I'm thinking that in the section about the application meeting the criteria, just as Councillor Justin has said, we're very clear on the fact that the application meets 3 of the 4 already existing parts for the policy. And I think the one that has really helped us maybe look at some things differently is the Appendix A that came in. I think that was really helpful. And I'm just looking there where Ms. Morrison had made the comment about it would affect the residents and the landscaping and such. And I think in the section of the Appendix D on page 3, they do speak to that it would certainly fit in better with the residential area. And I guess my final point and one question is, if Mr. Jenkins, if you could just let us know, in 1991 when the official zone was made up, you had just mentioned earlier that was always considered an R4 zoning in that area. So if residents built their properties around that area, would they have been aware that the R4 zoning was in place for any type of commercial or industrial development?
When it was zoned R4, that was part of our first official plan. So if they could have participated in the public process back at that time, I'm not sure whether they did or not. And some of those homes were existing back at that time. So certainly the vision has always been that be high density residential.
Oh. I appreciate you mentioning that, because where that helps me is to know that it always was that R4 zoning in that area. So we're not changing something, it's always been there. Anyway, a great application so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a quick question. So the FAR that you refer to, so why do we have it? I guess I just don't understand what purpose it serves if other municipalities don't require it.
There are many ways you can do it. It's something that we have always done since going back to our first official plan.
Okay.
We can certainly change the method to so many units per, your lot areas based on number of units. That's another avenue we can look at. It's just not commonly used by municipalities, a floor area ratio. It seems that something that came from perhaps British Columbia is where I found it being used. And Bruce knows what I'm alluding to, I guess.
Okay, okay, no, that's good for like
And one
moving
thing-
it forward.
As he's mentioning, it's just a form of controlling or maximizing the amount of density that's gonna happen. And as he stated, we used to be at 60%, the 80% got adjusted, and as Councillor MacDougall asked, the 80% puts us in line with the other major municipalities. That it's just a measure of saying the maximum amount of units or the maximum amount of floor area that's gonna be allowed to develop on the size of a lot. So we have a bigger lot, you can have more units or more square footage of building. It's just the whole idea of it is sound. It's just the method that's being used is different than other jurisdictions, but it is parallel. When you did the analysis, it's parallel density. We still are allowing the similar density to happen on whatever size of a lot. So it's just your first part of the question was why are we doing it? It's just to control the density that's happening on whatever size a lot can have so many units or square footage. They go on bigger lots, they can have more, and that's the tool that's used to evaluate the density that's gonna be permitted. That's why it's done. Our method is different than others, but as Dave mentioned, it's comparable to when you use the different method. Whether that makes sense to you or not. But
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking like, just, to be accommodating to developers, would it be easier for us to just do what others are doing? Rather than them having to try to figure it out here and a different, anyway, it's just something to think about if you're going to move it forward to the next one. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from members of council? I'll just make a couple of quick comments. Thanks, of course, to staff as always for their work on this application. Thanks to the public for all of their comments. It's always important to make sure that we have engagement from members of the public. And obviously to echo the thanks for the applicant for the well-conceived application, as well as for continuing to look to invest here in Summerside and provide much-needed affordable housing and housing options across the spectrum and that meet the diverse needs of our community, particularly at this time while we are growing. I have read the entire package, and I certainly agree with staff on items B, C, and D. I also had on item A, I think, of 7.2, that the hardship is due to unique physical conditions, and so on and so forth. I read staff's comment. I also read the applicant's justifications. I find the applicant's justifications to be reasonable, and I think that they presented a solid foundation and a solid rationale, and one that I'd be prepared to accept and support. On the matter of the floor area ratio, I do think we should just have that as a conversation afterwards. And it was certainly a term, or the particulars of a term, that I wasn't really familiar with. I spent some time today reading about it and looking at what other municipalities do across North America, and it seems as though our floor area ratio, if we want to continue to promote walkable communities, probably needs to be higher, but it certainly should be something looked at outside of the context of this application. But as I said, for the justifications presented by the applicant, I agree with them. I think that they have met the test, and I think they have and I think that those comments are reasonable in the context of the application, so I'll be certainly supporting it with my one opportunity to vote. I know council needs to keep an open mind in between, and so do I, but at the same time, this is my only chance to vote. I have no further comments. Any other from council? Okay, now we'll move to calling for a vote on the recommendation.
Okay, I'll just read the recommendation just one last time before we, planning board votes. Planning board recommendation, the application from 103112 PEI Inc. for PID number 11362558, requesting a 22% variance to the floor area ratio, allowing a proposed floor area ratio of 11,131 square meters. Whereas the City of Summerside zoning bylaw allows a floor area ratio of 8,797 square meters in the R4 zone, be recommended to be approved by council. Moved by myself and seconded by Deputy Mayor Snow. And if there are no further questions, we'll just call for the planning board vote. All members of the planning board in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? There are none opposed, so that will go to council with the endorsement of planning board.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. We'll now adjourn the planning board meeting. We'll just take 2 minutes as there are a couple of members of the gallery who are probably here for the planning board meeting and not here for the committee of the whole, and then we'll continue with the committee of the whole meeting at 6:05. Thanks. right, Brian, we're good? Okay, folks, we will continue on with the evening. I will now call to order the City of Summerside Committee of the Whole meeting for October 3rd, 2023. I'm going to take a motion to approve the agenda, but with that, we're going to add an amendment based on the planning board discussions. Councillor Duran would like to add under item B13 now, floor area ratio for a discussion of Committee of the Whole. With that amendment, I call for an approval of the agenda. Councillor Adams, second. Councillor MacDougall, all in favor? Any opposed? There being none, we will proceed with the agenda as presented. We're beginning this evening with presentation from staff on the east-west housing corridor. So at this point, we'll hand it over to CAO, Deputy CAO, and Director of Technical Services.
All right, thank you very much, Your Worship. So as council recalls, we budgeted money this year to start the phase 1 of the east-west housing corridor. Staff have been working since the budget was approved and working with external engineering firms, WSP, in order to get the east-west housing corridor ready to go out for tender for the start of the construction of the road. We thought it was appropriate time to give committee an update on the plans, where we are with it, and give committee a chance to have any questions. So we do have a presentation that put together, and I'll just run through it. Basically, the east-west connector is initially determined to be going back as far as 1998, and there was a report done in 2001 that determined the need, that there would be a need for the road as traffic trends were projected to increase. The traffic trends didn't increase necessarily as quickly as predicted, but recently there has obviously been more traffic, but there's also been much more need for housing. Originally, there was consideration given to a short connector and a long connector. A long connector would go out to Reed's Corner. What we're currently talking about is the shorter version of a connector road. And in 2023, the missing ingredient was realized, which is the demand for development. And phase 1, as touched on earlier, was approved in our capital budget for this year. The reason for the road is to open significant acreage for development of housing and commercial development. So it will also improve traffic flow. It'll improve fire and emergency response times. You'll see later on the map we're going to create a new trailhead development entrance for Rotary Friendship Park. There's going to be a modern design approach to the road. This will act as basically a benchmark for future zoning considerations in open space. There will be sidewalk and active transportation connectivity with the road, and a very kind of safety piece that the folks in the off Small and Gillespie have been talking about quite a bit is additional access and egress for those streets. The path of the road really has been driven by development opportunities and needs, and who owns the land, and which landowners are kind of closest ready to have the land developed. In this map, you'll see the outline in red is phase 1, which the tender is ready to go out for. So you'll see it comes down and connects on Water Street, just to the west of the Cairns Motel. Yeah, there's a stub off right here into that Small Avenue. There's two. Yeah, no, sorry. So two stubs into the trailer park, and a connector directly into the park at the very top.
Cardinal, the bottom one will be a stub that will go across the future development to Cardinal. And I don't think there's a gap at the top that doesn't get a street, it doesn't get an exact street, it tees in the street that's going on instead at the very top. Maybe that was a rule that they left open.
Now, this map outlines the proposed route for phase 2 of the development, which will cut across to Ryan Street at the top. This map outlines what a future development in the whole area will potentially look like. You'll see more red streets there. Yeah, JP's pointing to them. Those are potential streets and a street layout that will be built by the landowners eventually. We're talking about modern design, structures. We're trying to really, this is, as the mayor's pointed out, this is not so much about building a street, it's about really opening up a whole new neighborhood for development in the city. And as we get into the official east-west connector plan, which is a planning document that's actually part of our official plan, staff will be bringing that plan back to council for zoning amendment changes as we go forward. And we'll be using modern design principles for those zoning conversations. Aaron, you may want to speak to this. This is basically a cross-section of what the road's gonna look like.
That road's cross-section is similar to what we would see on MacEwen Road. It's a little bit wider than the most recent residential ones we have been built by private individuals or companies. One lane each way, as well as having an additional lane on the shoulder, like you see on the same MacEwen Road in front of Three Oaks. There's a north and southbound lane, and then there's a white shoulder. There's also then a grass buffer strip and then a sidewalk. The additional part here is there's a grass buffer strip on the other side, as well as an active transportation lane. So it's I'll say one step up from MacEwen Road. That's the overall width of the street, wide like MacEwen Road, not like Putters and St. Clair's. They're just been recently built.
Again, from a traffic and safety perspective, we're gonna have improved access for fire and emergency vehicles, and enhanced pedestrian safety with the sidewalks throughout and the active transportation lane. And some numbers, basically the east-west housing corridor is gonna open up approximately 345 acres of land for development. Conservatively speaking, this will potentially mean 2,000 plus units of new housing for the city. From a developer's or from the landowner's point of view, the city is going to look after all the related infrastructure, and the project will be installed and managed by the city. The landowners, there will be latecomer charges applied to the landowners. But in terms of the amount of time, effort, and money that's tied up when a developer has to build their own road, this is a big burden we are taking off those landowners. You will, if you think back to the map, the road is going to cut across the Hall Family Trail, which is a trail that's part of Rotary Park right now. But it gives us an opportunity to create a new entrance to Rotary Park at that end of the park. We'll have an active transportation route that will go from Water Street up the east-west connector into the Rotary Park. And as other developments happen, we will be taking what's it called, the Park Dedication Fund? Parkland dedication, as part of the parkland dedication funds for other developments in that area, we will get more land and make that part of Rotary Friendship Park. So overall, this whole project should lead to an expansion of Rotary Friendship Park. You'll see here, plan is to have a comprehensive street tree program through the road. And the zoning considerations, again, I'm gonna let Aaron touch on this piece.
As you'd mentioned, we had talked about this for many years prior when we came back with the original document to create an east-west connector street plan. As Gordon mentioned, is a plan that's really is part of our official plan, the secondary plan. With our official plan, we have a matching zoning document to implement that plan. We never created that zoning portion back in '08. So we had created the draft of it and basically was parked until such time as we were actually going to proceed with the actual construction. And as time would have it, turns out the needs right now are probably different than they were in '08 and '09 compared to now. And the target or the strengths or demands is really in high density, even more than we thought it might have been then. So again, we are creating a draft document that's ready to go out to actually create a east-west housing or corridor zone, whatever the actual name we're gonna. The only difference in that zone is gonna be, it's gonna act, what we're proposing now to bring forward to the public and landowners and yourselves is that this will act like we currently have a CDA or a comprehensive development area zone, that people will be able to come forward with, I'll say, similar to this evening, something more dense, more higher, more floor area, less parking, all those types of things are going to be able to come forward and decrease the amount of parkland dedication. We're only looking at creating a zone 200 feet on each side of this street as a target density and more incentivized to the individual landowner and developers to say, what can we make this area special? Allow them the creativity to come forward and say, we're not just going to look at your standards that you have forward. If we've got better vision and density, what we think we can sell and develop, bring that forward. And we're going to be able to approve those on a case-by-case basis, but provide the parameters now in a zone to say, here's what you should come forward with. I'd given you guys some sort of an update, I think, back in June, so I just dug out those notes, and some of the things we looked at back and then talked about was potentially a reduction in the parkland footprint that they're going to be considered for the calculations, additional floor area ratio for buildings. In that sense, we said when they provide the parking at the rear, we want to have the buildings up front, not have driving through and just seeing all parking lots. It would also look at potentially reducing the number of required parking spaces. Again, the developers may choose not to because they want to provide one space for every unit because who's potentially going to rent. We also looked at increasing the lot coverage for apartment buildings. Again, looking at the overall setback, maybe out closer to the sidewalk to promote people to be able to pop out there and walk right on the sidewalk or the active transportation without going through a parking lot. Look at the overall heights, increasing the overall height of buildings as part of the proposal. And so those are some of the things that we're going to bring forward to say those are the principles that are in the plan now, and we're going to bring that forward to create a parallel timing with the tender going out and kick off a new zone to create with this project. Again, not really as of right, but laying out principles and then saying, come in forward with a proposal for this section of land and we'll look at it, and you may be doing something that's, some would say, more dense or outside our current standards.
Thanks, Aaron. So the timelines that we have currently, there's an update to committee this evening to outline what the current plans look like. The tender should go out later this week for the road. Will close on October 19th. Reason for that is depending on obviously on who wins the tender and what their timelines are, but there's certainly a possibility for some work to be done this fall and even into but also gives the winning contractor the ability to buy the pipe and other, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, pipe, manholes, catch basins, road. I was gonna say ingredients, that's not the right word, but.
They may choose to buy their gravel or speak for their gravel or charge it in.
Materials, that's the word. Buy their materials this year and get 2023 pricing. You typically see a 8 to 10% increase in pricing year over year, so if they can lock those prices in now, even if they're doing the majority of the work in 2024, that'll be fine. I think that it. Yeah, so that's a fairly quick overview. I don't know how to go back there, but open it up for any questions.
I just had
Okay.
a couple quick, because I know I'll be asked, because this is pretty exciting for sure. No matter which phase we did, we're doing the north part? We're doing the northern part first?
Starting on Water Street East, heading north.
Yeah.
Yes, we're doing the northern part first.
It's
Even-
actually the southern part, north is at the top of the page, not out to Ryan Street.
Right, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
right. So, no matter which phase we did first, it would allow for at least that top part to go into Woodridge, correct? Like,
Correct.
Yeah,
I
that was-
know. yeah,
That's
that-
always been the
That's always
thought,
been the
yeah.
plan. So, yeah, no matter what we were doing, they were going to get another
Yeah.
way out.
Yeah.
So where it's coming out at, since we're already experiencing issues, with traffic coming out of Small, Gillespie was just brought up at the last meeting, and St. Clair is always sort of different if you don't go around to the lights on Hillside. What's the exit going to look like? Is it going, will there be lights, will there be a turning lane like we have into Small, or what's?
The design completed as of now has a dedicated left turn lane on Water Street East for the cars that are, if you're heading out of town and want to turn in there, there'll be a dedicated left turn lane. The traffic that's coming in will actually be moved over towards the shoulder, so they're not head on to that left turn lane.
Right.
And the intersection's been designed to be signalized. So
Nice.
whenever it's deemed the demand is there, or
Awesome.
when the entire thing opens up or completed.
I see. Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Just because I know people, certainly when it comes to rezoning applications, people love visuals. Could you go back to the cross-section of the, just, I wanted to sort of make a point to anybody that might be listening. Gordon, you made it easy for me to sort of picture this, and when you described it as a MacEwen Road, or maybe that was Aaron. It's a MacEwen Road with everything that MacEwen Road has, plus the AT lane. So it's not a big bypass like in Charlottetown with 4 lanes. It's, people just, if they can picture MacEwen Road with that AT lane, that's what we're talking about. I'm done, I just can't turn my mic off.
I just wanted to ask, with regards, and I may have missed it, may have already said it, but I just wanted to confirm publicly. So for the east-west housing corridor, the phase 1, that is going to be coming out or being covered by the 2023 budget that we've already allocated? Like, it's not new money being spent, it's already been allocated?
Correct, yeah, council passed that in this year's budget.
Okay,
Yep.
no, and I knew that we did, but I
Yep.
just wanted to confirm again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It really exciting opportunity, and Gordon, the language I use is we say it's not road building, it's city building, and we don't often as a city get that opportunity to do that and to really infill a section of our city that and meet a need that's so desperate with respect to housing, but also do it in a really modern and innovative way, as you can see with what you've presented with the AT and the sidewalks and the zoning considerations and the expansion, long-term expansion of Rotary Park, and the a new trailhead to help people access that park, and connecting the Confederation Trail as well at this point. So great job. I think it's really exciting, and thank you very much for the update. The one Question I did have, it did come up at a standing committee meeting, was the question of electrical wires. I don't know if there had been any further consideration or discussion about that, if what that would look like or what options were potentially available. And I know there's some councillors who are asking about it, but I guess no one did, so I will.
The design for this first half is, I'll say, complete except for the electrical component. The second half is being continued on. I did reach out to our municipal service director and say that this project is on. We need to look at, bring forth how it's going to be serviced electrically, whether it be overhead and underground, and that council potentially be looking at the option of going underground so that they can start to prepare not just the cost, but also we don't know where the lots are. We're just putting through a road, and for them to think about how they're gonna, it's easy when the line's going across to say a new lot's being created and I gotta jump off. I don't know what that looks like when they're doing it underground, so I want them to consider that.
Yeah, that's really helpful, and yeah, that's what I was hoping you'd point out too, for sure, because when we don't know where it's supposed to come out, so anyhow, but it's good that we're looking at it, and again, fantastic job. Thank you for the presentation. I think it was really helpful, and well, it's exciting.
Just one quick one. When the meeting with the landowners, was that on those dates there, like a public? Sorry.
We were gonna be doing when we're ready to do the zoning part, we're getting awful close to do that. We'll actually schedule or try to book through staff and book meeting dates with you guys to say, and prior to that, we'll also identify with the individual landowners. This is gonna be a city-wide zone, but we'll still identify the individual landowners that this is gonna cut across and identify them to say this is what the zoning is for their exact land. So we'll have to do out notifications to those as part of that.
Okay.
We have been in touch with the various property owners years back to get permission to go on and do the survey and share the options years ago.
So
But
they have an idea, yeah.
they did a number of years ago,
Yeah.
you know. And anybody that's come in have asked to develop in that area, we've shared this overall plan or image. That was the long-term plan.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And sorry, one more. The folks that may be farming in those locations, I know I've spoken to a couple that, you know, they lease land to farm. Like, is this, I don't know what the harvest schedules are like, but how does this sort of look like for those folks that are using the land right now for
Well, we
crops?
started the design and had to push on for the summer, and then we kind of paused for two parts. One was we were chasing funding that was this project would qualify for, so that was going to be in August, so we paused the design to finish, and also that the crops are in, so that right now we're talking, if the tender closes on the October 19th and we get a week to award if they're ready to start, we're hoping that we'll coordinate with them on the crops. It is a corn crop in the one major part now. Potatoes are usually out by late October. We're going to coordinate them once we know we're going to go ahead with the landowner and get the contacts to say when that section will be, harvested.
Great, thanks very much. Yeah, awesome, we'll move on. I might try, Aaron, I might just keep you guys here for 2 seconds, if that's all right, just with the next item, since it's intimately related, particularly to your department, but also just in general. I think it's up to you. Sure, you might as well stick for a couple minutes. Just I put it on here, and you guys are the experts on it. Yeah, this is an item I put on the committee of whole agenda, which is the complete streets. In our official plan from 2018, we have an outline to produce a complete streets strategy, and what complete streets mean, at least according to our official plan. is set out at page 55, and it says roadway investments must be balanced with investments in other transportation modes. Bicycles and pedestrian are an important component of the transportation system. Residents will be encouraged to integrate bicycling and walking into their daily activities to promote a healthy lifestyle and improve energy conservation. Now, the point on the complete streets are designed and operated to enable safe access for all users, pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, and transit riders of all ages and abilities are to move safely along and across a complete street. The city and its residents own the streets and sidewalks, so they need to work for everyone, not just drivers. By designing for people, not just cars, we can make our streets more safe, attractive, and welcoming for all. Thinking in terms of a complete street leads to accommodating cyclists and pedestrians as a routine part of planning, design, and construction of the transportation network. And it goes on for 2 more paragraphs. One that talks just briefly about bicyclists, and then it closes with, everyone who travels throughout a city becomes a pedestrian for some portion of a trip. A functional, safe pedestrian public realm is vital for successful street multimodal design. Pedestrians are generally defined as a person walking, jogging, using wheelchair mobility aids, and people walking dogs or children or infants. Although when you read that, people walking children. Anyhow, for children or infants, it went to the leash. So I have heard me speak a number of times about asking about sidewalks, particularly as they, when we talk about rezoning our 4 developments. And throughout our official plan, at section 3.0, it says we want opportunities for complete streets for vehicles, bikes, and pedestrian options. At 3.2, it says we want walkable neighborhoods that ensure the kind land use and design enhance and support pedestrian-friendly design and reduce the number of vehicle trips. At 3.4, we have policy set out, we have a policy to provide less emphasis on automobile and to reduce street widths. 3.5, we talk about walkable neighborhoods as a policy point, and then there are a number of development strategies at 3.7 with specific objectives, all to complete streets that talk about narrower streets and more pedestrian access. I also then looked at the subdivision site development bylaw review, site development bylaws that says our streets are to contribute to community livability. And our development standards bylaw says street layout must conform to any provisions of the Summerside official plan. So my question is, which I ask all the time, which is how do we design our streets? What opportunities are there for us to reconsider how we design our streets from a way that best supports the language in our official plan? I was traveling, I went to a visitation today, and I walked, and whenever I walk from here, it's so easy because there are sidewalks in the older part of our community. But as you travel further and further outside, for a variety of reasons over time, there are fewer and fewer, and it is much more difficult to walk, whether you're walking a child or a dog or yourself. And certainly there's many opportunities for people to be out and about on sidewalks in their neighborhoods and in their communities. Not only does it provide for a safer mode of transportation when people are out walking, it also creates a more healthier population, but it also creates more opportunities for people to say hello, which even happened to me today walking 4 blocks. Up the street, I ran into 3 or 4 people that I otherwise wouldn't have done if I had just gotten in my car and there was no sidewalk and I had drove to where I was going. So I've looked, but I haven't been able to find anything that says we require or don't require sidewalks, and what I'd like to do is get some feedback on it, and I'd love to send it to Planning Board Standing Committee to look at what our street design is and see how that compares to other places. We hear a lot about traffic here. I have this little joke when I talk about how much I like traffic because it means that people live here, it means that they have places to go and things to do, and that's really, really good given the alternative. But also really the only ways to try and reduce the amount of traffic that we have is, one is to simply not grow, which doesn't appear to be an option for us. And then the others are public transit and providing more ways for people to move, such as sidewalks and bicycle paths. And designing our neighborhoods and communities for how people move as opposed to necessarily first and foremost how cars move. So I'd just like to get a better idea of the types of streets and roads that we have in the community, and why some do, why some don't have more pedestrian access, and if there are things we can look at to increase that. Again, I think of my neighborhood. We're really privileged to live in a neighborhood with large lot sizes and homes and things, and near Rotary Park. But again, our whole neighborhood, there are no sidewalks in our neighborhood. And that's the same for a lot of Councillor Adams, Councillor MacDougall, and I know if there were, it would be safer for our community, and I think all the evidence shows that if you want people to slow down, one, you enforce traffic requirements, which we've done here at Council and shown great results. And the second is to have narrower streets, which slows vehicles down. If you build big, wide streets with lots of room for cars, people are going to go faster than they would otherwise. So I guess it's a question, and then see if there's any discussion, or it's something that can go to standing committee for planning board.
Well, I just want to comment on that. Your worship is in my ward, and yeah, Walker Avenue does not have any sidewalks, but either does Galand or Craig. And there's people in that area that are seniors or that have mobility issues, and they're actually walking on the street. And there's been quite a few almost mishaps with cars and walkers and people in general. So I really think that there needs to be sidewalks on these streets, because the population uptown is growing in leaps and bounds, and if we want to keep people safe, we need sidewalks. And on talking on that, the light situation coming from the Pizza Delight coming down, going into Ryan, the walk lights there, the timing is not enough, because last week there must have been 4 people that almost got killed trying to walk across the street, and somebody turning, and they just stopped dead on the street while the person was walking across the street. So I really think the timing needs to be checked on those walk lights and give everybody a chance to get across the street. Young people can get across fast, but anybody that's got a mobility issue or a senior, it takes them at least 4 minutes to get across the street.
All right, so I guess back to the question as well. Thank you, Councillor Glant, to you, Aaron, which is, how do we design our streets? How do we look at designing our streets, and how do we, well, I guess the 2 questions is, one, I know we've built a lot of sidewalks in our city over a number of years and have been adding our sidewalk network and connecting our schools. I think that's how it started, connecting residents to schools and institutions and places that people need to be able to walk first. But then the second question I have is, as we continue to see more development and build more streets, and this really came up when we looked at recent development on what is now Key Avenue, which I drove down the other day and just thought, like, why don't we require developers to put a sidewalk, a curbed sidewalk, not necessarily even that separated sidewalk. I know there's a cost consideration here, but at the same time, we have a cost for the community, and if we, it's certainly more expensive as we continue to do it down the road. So, yeah, we'd like to know what, how we designate our streets and which ones include, meet the complete streets goals of the official plan.
I guess start back, our streets were, when we became a city, the streets were would go in as ditched, 20 feet wide, grass shoulder. That's what we had for ditches. That's what we had for asphalt width for 2 lanes of traffic, and that's what we had for walking. People walked either on the edge of the asphalt or the grass shoulder, not just the outlying areas. Some of the inside areas as well were 2 lanes. In 97, 98 or something, we came through with subdivision standards and said we wanted to increase the actual design of our streets. It then went from 6 meters, 20 feet to 8.5 meters. with curbs, all new subdivisions that went in. The intent was to allow 2 meters or 2 lanes of traffic and have 1 extra lane that people could either park or walk on. That would be curbed, and then it would allow for, if the density and required, it gave us room to add the sidewalk behind the curb. So that allowed us in future to be able to place the sidewalk in the higher densities. When we shift over to sidewalks where they were being selected, we had a mismatch of 3 communities that had sidewalks, and some of them connected to each other and some didn't. So the first part was trying to give interconnectivity to those existing sidewalks. And then, as you mentioned, we target where's everybody going, primarily the walking destinations. We tried getting connections to the existing Confederation Trail. We then went to all the churches, schools, and parks to try and allow the high-density areas that people could walk to those. And we, in the last 5 years, we created a long list. We had most of those completed in the last 5 years. Then we started targeting high-density residential areas that we thought we would get high user rates or walking. Not going to say it left the single-family subdivisions on the lower list, but we targeted everywhere that had. So we went back to the zoning map and we put on the actual apartment buildings and the building layer and said, here's where we have high-density residential areas, and can we get sidewalk areas to those? And we also tried getting at least a sidewalk into a lot of subdivisions, because a lot of them had 1 park. So off of the main trunks, we tried at least getting 1 sidewalk into a park. A lot of the smaller subdivisions had a park. So that's we did not have a standard to require developers to include sidewalks as part of their development. A lot had been in previously saying the cost was not there for them to, even when we had the street and bringing it to putting curbs on, and that there wasn't the viability for them to do the subdivision. So the sidewalk was another cost that was going to be added onto that. It was not added to the development standard. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Yeah, and again, I think it helps add the historical context to it. So I guess my general question, though, too, is this something we can look at as a council? Because I do think again, we've done, even recently, we're rezoning for R4 on Key, Water Street, Schooner, Simmons. And if we're going to be having more and more people living in smaller and smaller spaces and with more and more density, with the concerns that we do hear from residents with respect to traffic are valid, but also we got to understand that a lot of folks who are living in apartments also need the opportunity to walk in their neighborhood. So I would just see if council was open to having planning board look at what options there are and do some of that, I guess, have some digging as we go forward to what those that costing would be for developers.
Are you talking with new developments? I'm just wondering how we do that, because if the city was to do it, it's going to cost us a lot of money, and if the developer is to do it, it's going to drive up the cost of lots. Anyway, I'm interested in listening to anything that tech service can bring back. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I think look at all the options. Like I said, when I read the official plan to me suggests that that's what we're supposed to be doing here. When I read it and look at all the comments in here, and the direction and the policies, they are all geared towards increasing pedestrian opportunities and on to make up complete streets. It says complete streets strategy. So I guess I'm asking, perhaps we can look at what a complete street strategy would be and how we implement that. And certainly, you're right, there are costs for developers, but at the same time, developers are making money as well. So sometimes it's better to be able to spread those costs out. And when you have more density, you save on some of the costs. The same way we save on water and sewer infrastructure. When we have an apartment building, we can serve 60 or 120 individuals and families with a far smaller footprint for our infrastructure needs. So there may be opportunities there for us to explore what a complete street strategy looks like, and as it go forward, and then continue with the work that we have been doing over the years. So as long as no one's opposed to that, to propose that we send that to the standing committee for planning board standing committee, and we'll put that on the agenda when we have the opportunity. I think we have a few things on there, and then can report back to committee of the whole for discussion, and take it from there. Okay, great. And thank you for all the work you guys have done for the years to get more and more sidewalks built in our community. And I will stop talking about sidewalks all the time now that we have another place to talk about it. With that, we are moving on to item 5, which is pedestrian walkway, active transportation access on Water Street East. Councillor Adams, do they need to come back?
More sidewalks. I was asked to put this on. It's been sort of a growing issue as the area develops with Arsenault's apartments and Starlight. People have been reaching out. The only way for those individuals, and it's a dense area. We do have, some families, some seniors in the area as well. And the only way for them to get across to a sidewalk is to either walk up to Small on the shoulder of the road and get the crosswalk across, or walk all the way down to Reed's Corner. But even then, there's not really there's not a crosswalk that goes from that side of Water Street over. It just comes out by Prestige. So since the developer donated to the Parkland Fund when they built this, residents are inquiring if they can tap into those funds for a way for them to get across, to use the sidewalks, to get to the parks and so on that the developer has paid for them to use. So I'm not sure how we go about this. I think everybody knows which area I'm talking about. So, and in all the developments, it was mentioned that Lafergie Park is across the road, and we're pushing people there, but there's no way for them to get there safely. So I'm not sure if we want to have a discussion on it, or what the next steps is to look at getting something done for those people.
Councillor, if committee wishes, I can have staff take a look at kind of costs and options for a crosswalk. Likely, I'm thinking you need the flashing signals there as well for the level of traffic, but we can take a look at that and get some costs associated and bring that back to budget for this season, if that's.
Thank you.
Yeah, and perhaps also with the Standing Committee on Planning Board can look at that as an example of what we're talking about for complete streets and pedestrian mobility. Like ultimately you want even the kids in that neighborhood to be able to cross over and access the trail network to be able to get to school. So yeah, absolutely. And our seniors to be able to cross the street safely. And again, we want to try and create, what I'm really hoping we try and do and try to achieve here as a city, which is not only make it safer, but also, like I said earlier, create more opportunities for people to have interactions in real life with other members of their community, because I think that is something that we are all struggling with everywhere, and that provide a whole lot of benefits. So let's make sure we look at it as on the planning board and bring it back on the budget, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was a really interesting point whenever somebody mentioned the parkland dedication that the developers for both of those areas have paid into, but they're not able to safely, and in the recommendations by, staff, it was that there was parkland close by, so they could access that, but they aren't able to safely access it now. So, yeah, budget or sooner if the funds are there and staff can look at it. But, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor McColeman, Fitzroy and Granville intersection I turn on every single day, and I have a suspicion as to what you're going to talk about.
Have you ever nearly had an accident? Are you one of
every
the
day.
ones?
I turn left there every day to head north. And
Well, I thank you for the time on the agenda. I just want to speak to yourself, your worship, and fellow councillors. I know that you've received my emails in response to this specific resident. But there's a number of residents on the Fitzroy and Granville Street area that are very, very concerned about the traffic and the safety and near misses. I won't get into the whole detail or names, but I think this is probably about the fourth email back and forth and several phone calls. And I think the crux of the matter is that there is a safety concern. There's been approximately 3 near misses. The most recent one has involved an e-bike rider and an automobile, and it was very lucky that the man was not killed. And the question being asked is, and I think it's more out of frustration, will City Council wait until someone is killed before doing something about this problem? And I think we have that in all various wards. It's not just specific to this one, but I think the ward is comprised of people with accessibility, all different ages, young families, newcomers who may not be familiar with some of the pedestrian signage, those kinds of things. And I just, after sending a number of emails, I'm just hoping that the bylaw officer that is in place, that there will be some engagement, because I think what happens is the calls or the emails comes to councillors. I think they think that we have more power than we actually really do, that there has to be a consensus. It's not up to me to give direction. And again, there's other factors that are involved with policing, road safety, traffic counts, those kinds of things. So as I indicated, and out of respect for privacy, I won't mention the name, but I believe that they are planning on doing a petition because they really feel that it is something that needs to be looked at. It's one of the busiest streets in Summerside as a thoroughfare street on Granville, and there's a lot of traffic either uptown Granville or in the downtown area that's using it. And they just feel that it's very hard. Now, I don't know whether it has to do with a hedge that it has been cut back, but when you come to the stop sign, and I know I've looked and tried at different times, you're almost quite a ways out on Granville Street before you can even make a turn or see what's coming. So I'm putting that before council so that the residents do know that it's on some type of an agenda, whether it's the new bylaw officer or if the police would take a look at that, it would be a great thing. I think through the 3 accidents that have happened, my indication in the email was that I would think that through police services, there would have been some type of a report done on the traffic count or what happened at the accidents, but they're feeling a bit neglected in a sense where this has been ongoing for over a year and a half, and they're very concerned. So as their councillor, I am advocating for them that it be looked at and considered. And I'm open for any questions or whatever.
No, I agree with you on that, especially when you're turning up a Fitzroy to go up or to go down. It's definitely a blind spot there where the nose of your car is going to be cut off before you can actually see if you're free to go. And I've had that couple of near misses there myself, but there was another one that I noticed today. I came across Lafergie, and where the new apartment buildings by the province is being built to put a fence around there, that fence is out too far to the street because you have to be out before you can see somebody coming down. You have to be out quite a ways before you can see somebody coming down Granville Street, so I think we need to look at that one too. Thanks.
Okay, and I think just as a very quick footnote, I know that, and they're in Ward 6 is the one at St. Paul's intersection. People were very concerned about that 4-way stop, as well as in the other part of my ward on Harvard Street, Harvard and Granville. There was concern about that 4-way stop. And now I have heard nothing but really positive comments from residents. They find that the flow is much better and safer. So I think these folks on Fitzroy and Granville are looking maybe for the same type of at least a 4-way stop or something to just to slow and calm the traffic down a bit.
Well, you sort of just answered my question. I was sort of wondering so is the issue the fact that there's some obstructed view, or like when I think of Fitzroy and Granville, I think of it being very close to an existing four-way stop and water, so like another four-way stop, I don't know if that's what's needed as much as it appears like there's a hedge issue. Cause if you're having to creep out, a four-way stop is not necessarily gonna fix, you're still gonna have to creep out, you'll just be in the middle whenever somebody's trying to go through the four-way stop, so I guess my question is, are the people asking for a four-way stop, or are they asking for the intersection to be looked at to see what the options are?
They are asking, basically for a four-way stop if the city can do nothing else to prevent the blind spots. And in fairness, I've checked the area. There's one hedge that they do keep it very trim far back from the stop sign, so that's not, it doesn't seem to be an issue. But there's another one where the stop sign is on Fitzroy Street. You still have to go out quite a ways onto Granville to see what's coming from Upper Granville Street. And it's not so much that the hedge is high, there's just some blind spots because of the hedge. And I'm not a traffic,
No, me,
Yeah.
I'm just, I guess my opinion is for that hedge and any other hedge or tree or whatever, if it's causing a area that you cannot see and traffic concerns, then we would have some sort of right of way to get rid of that hedge, as unfortunate as that seems. I don't know if a four-way stop in that, and I like four-way stops, but I think they need to be in specific areas. I just don't see that being an area for a four-way stop, but I think it definitely sounds
Yeah.
like it needs to be addressed, so.
and I think that's where probably police services needs to really look at it, because they have their traffic count
Right.
and the logistical work.
So Councillor, just on this one, I have seen those emails, and we have already asked staff to start to take a look at it, so police and tech services staff will take a look at it and compare with our existing rules, and if our existing rules, even if the hedge is following the existing rules, if it's still creating a blind spot, then we may have to look at other solutions and changing the rules as well, so.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Moving on, item 7, MacEwen Road, traffic near schools, Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Your Worship. I find a lot of our issues here seem to be seasonal. So as the seasons change, the issues change, and of course, so with school opening a month ago approximately, I've had an opportunity to be in contact with a few of the people that live in the MacEwen Road area, and High Street, of course, is the other one. But and again, I got to be always careful when I say this, but I really don't believe traffic issues in Summerside are as big as we sometimes think they are. But MacEwen Road has a fair or a good amount of traffic on it, but it usually goes along pretty good. But anyway, the issue some of the people are having, or the residents in that area, are I think you have the two schools, one 3 Oaks, of course, and Athena, the other one. And I must add in that there's lots of signage there too for the school zones, and where it goes from 15 drops down to 40, I believe, are the numbers. But anyway, they're just always concerned about traffic and safety, and I was wondering, I don't know how many there are around town, but the digital signs that give you the amount or your speed when you're driving by and all that, I think what some of them would like to see in that area is maybe in the half a dozen or whatever the city, I assume, owns, or if one could be moved into that area. I'm not exactly sure where the best spot would be. The police services or something would probably figure that, whether it's in between the two schools or at the start of one or the other, but maybe that would help, just to remind people, you know, the signage is there on what you're supposed to be traveling at. But to me, every time I drive by one, it's telling me I'm probably going a little too quick, and I have a tendency to slow down. So they do work, I think. But I think that would make some of the people in the area, you know, make it look like that we have a care or concern about it, especially with safety, and especially with the young kids going to school. You don't want to see anybody get hurt. So just a reminder maybe of how fast you're traveling or not, and it may make people more aware, especially for people who don't live in Summerside, may not be aware that there's two school zones there. And anyway, just a thought that, and maybe the CAO can look into, but I think him and I had a discussion about it a few days ago anyway, but something like that. I'm not a big proponent of speed bumps. I'm not sure if they work or not, because they just get that thing where people stop or slow down and then take off again, and it doesn't. But I think the flashing digital speed sign would probably be a great help in that area if they could find their way into that area for a short period of time anyway.
If I can make one just observation, I travel daily, twice, MacEwen, from Athena all the way down, and I passed the 2 school zones, and I noticed, actually just the other day, that obviously the school zones, they're 40 from 8 to 4, I think June to September. So when you're passing, I guess it doesn't matter what way you're going, if you're passing one school, then that school zone ends. It's a very short distance. It goes to 50, and then there's another school zone. So it's almost worth looking at getting rid of that little section of 50, like, because during the day, if the school is in, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're going slower, and then you're given that very small window to get back up to 50, but then you got to slow back down to 40, and then out of it again, 50. Like, so maybe just taking one of those pieces out will help to some degree. I mean, if you're speeding, you're speeding. It doesn't matter if it's a 40 or a 50, but I just found that little stretch is so short, it's almost not even worth having in there.
Yeah, and that too, just to comment on that, and I agree totally with Councillor Justin that there is a small section there in between the signs that, you know, they let, it's 50, but it's 40 in the school zone, like he says, 8 to 5, June to September, or September to June. And it would make sense that why have that 50 in the middle anyway? Just take it out altogether.
It's still
It'd be
50
40 from,
after hours. It's still
Yeah.
going to be 50
yeah,
when it's
yeah.
July, August, whatever it is.
Yeah, it'd make it a little safer and not so complicated too. It's 40, you know, if the street was 40 from one end to the other, it's not the end of the world. What's 10 kilometers gonna do for you on a 2 kilometer stretch? Like, it's gonna save you 30 seconds or 20 seconds. It's, you know.
10 kilometers do a whole lot for you though, because if you get hit by a car and the car's going 40 kilometers an hour, 8 in 10 chance you're going to survive. Going 50 kilometers an hour, it's the opposite. And when I first moved to Summerside, I thought, oh my God, why is the speed limit so slow? It was crazy. And now I'm like, why are they so fast? Why are they 40 everywhere? So I also drive down there all the time, yeah. Although I told Gordon this the other day, Amsterdam and Glasgow and Scotland, they're lowering their speed limits to 30. So I tried driving around at 30, and it was a bit too slow.
Just on that, and I think that's what we're saying, if we got rid of the 50 in the middle and kept it at the 40 during school hours, you're still down at that 40 until school's out or until summer.
Yeah, and the other, I guess on the school zone too, though, the other thing to think about is that even when school's not in session, there's all kinds of kids using that space. They use the playground, they use the soccer field. At Athena, they use the rugby pitch and all this. Like, there's still a lot of activity for young people around those areas. But maybe that's something we can look at, Gordon, from overall those sort of 3 things: the flashing, the speed, and then I guess the third thing is always what's really worked so far in the last few months, which is telling Gordon where you think there are potential issues for running stop signs or speeding, and the traffic enforcement officers are out there. And we've seen in the monthly reports from Councillor Adams, it seems to be working. And I don't know if any of you guys are feeling this, but I get way fewer complaints about speeding than I did 6 months ago. So. So we can get a report back to council at some point on that, on Councillor Morrison's comments. Next, item number 8, maybe we can do 8 and 9 together, Councillor Adams, since they are related, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, is JP still here? Did he leave? Oh, he left, okay. Well, you're here, Gordon, so you can chime in too if, So the communications officer and the city branding, so these are items that have come up at the communications committee. And these are items that JP has noted. Him and Tanner Duran, who has done a lot of the legwork on this. I think JP's best scenario was they've gotten into the weeds on a lot of things. Like, there are a lot of things that we have out there communication wise that staff never even had an idea about. And JP said he's still in the basement with it, and he's not even partway up the basement stairs. Like, there is literally so much to do. Like, for example, getting an after hours call number. We had an after hours call number, but it wasn't manned. It didn't go anywhere. So that was, nobody really knew that. It would go to dispatch, I believe, would eventually pick it up. So just something like that, that's easy to do, and it helps the residents and it helps staff, because then, you know, everybody's getting timely information, and getting the communications out to people as a result. So it has been noted that this is a lot on staff to take on. And what happens is, if we leave it with all the individual departments, everybody's going to keep operating in silos like they have been for years. And that's why we have so many different ways of communicating and different looks to communicating. You'll notice on our social media now, Tanner has it pretty much all branded, and that goes into the next part too. And you know, if you look at the blue one, it's, you know, your monthly meetings and your council meetings. If you look at the mustardy yellow one, well, that's your municipal services, and your power is that like burgundy color or whatever. So you know when you're flipping through, like, oh, what was that? And it is catching the eye. So it's working. People have commented that it's working, and now the thing is that staff, there has to be somebody to take the lead on it. JP and Tanner, they are busy enough without being able to do this all the time. Like, their jobs are busy enough. So it was good, because it got, community services, I could say, probably do the most part of our communications to the public. So they were good ones to sort of dive in there and actually see who is doing what, who's not doing what we're not doing, where the gaps are. And there's still many gaps, but we're getting better at least recognizing them. But there needs to be a dedicated person, a communications officer, to do this. So it was felt that it was probably best, in order to figure out what exactly we need this person to do and define the role, that it be moved forward to the, was it policy, governance, and communications? Is that the right? Bylaw, governance, and communications, sorry. Communications committee for review, and then bring that back to council. So I'm not sure if anybody has any questions or comments, or I'm sure everybody's noticed that it's a lot better. So.
Just quickly, I've definitely noticed, and I think they're currently, given their resources, doing a pretty good job with it, but it's not sustainable, that's for sure. I remember first being elected, it was something I often harped on, is, you know, we need to find ways to better communicate with people, and once you communicate with people and people have a better understanding of what's going on, what you're doing within the city, things tend to move a lot smoother. So they're doing a great job, and I fully support moving ahead to see what we can do to keep improving. So good job.
So, Your Worship?
Yeah, I'd echo all those comments. Certainly we've seen great work from staff in the past number of months, tackling the communications beast, as I think of it. Communications is both internal and external, and it's really important how we communicate and connect with our residents. A lot of communications is informational communications, and we've talked about here at council and elsewhere about how we can do a better job sharing what we're doing, what services are available, what programming is available, making sure that the city has a consistent look and feel and message, and we're not stepping on each other's toes from a communication side. So yeah, I think of the city of Summerside as having 100 and some employees and operational budget of $50 million. That you need someone there and who's we can go to, and I think that we've had conversations, JP's reference too, like a bit of a workhorse to be able to get some of this stuff done. So perhaps if we can direct both those items to the committee, bylaw, governance, and communications, to come back with recommendations to council on sort of what the next steps would be there, I think that would be really helpful for all of us. And I know Gordon's staff have, there's a million different pressures and there's a million different costs. But I think this council also has identified that as a priority a number of times. So perhaps we can send it to that committee and the committee can look at coming back to council with specific or recommendations on those things.
And like I said, with the city branding too, because I think, Gordon, you can pipe in if you want, like, I'm not sure, but as JP and, Tanner kept digging, there was so many things that, it could be from anywhere, but you want to look at it and say, oh, that's Summerside, right? Like, you want it to have an identifying feature or whatever, so just to, and everybody, there's no resistance, everybody's buying in, it's much easier on everybody if we're all, using the same template and moving forward, and so, and relying on one person to do it would just be an extra step in getting that message out, so. Okay.
Great, well, if no one's opposed to council, then we'll send those two items to bylaw, governance, and communications, and they can put them on their agenda. They have a couple of things, but not too much, and they can come back to council. Great. That'll be for numbers 8 and 9, so move on to item number 10, non-resident tax rate. Councillor MacDougall.
Thank you, Your Worship, and our Finance Committee met last week, or days go by so fast now, though. I think it was a week and a half ago. But we discussed, had a little bit of a discussion around a non-resident tax rate for non-commercial. We haven't, hello? Rick's got to do the stroll. Anyway, this is something that we discussed at the Finance Committee, and just wanted to take it here tonight to get your thoughts on it. But we need to look at ways of increasing revenues. This is a non-resident tax rate. This is a non-resident of PEI, not a PEI resident. So, and it would be on non-commercial is what we're looking at first, or whatever. But Kristen has been trying to get some information on it, so I just put it on the floor here this evening for any thoughts, and we would I'll be taking it back to our Finance Committee and coming forward with a recommendation.
And I'm sure there will be some answers, but coming forward in the future. But I'm curious. You mentioned commercial to begin with.
No, non-commercial.
Non-commercial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
So do we have an approximate number of how many residents would be falling into this category? Like, what are we talking? What?
It's a non-resident.
Well, yeah, but how many properties? I mean,
Properties, yeah.
or non-residents would fall in this category?
I'm not sure if we have that, but if we do, it would be the lady behind you.
I'm just wondering, is it significant enough to?
It could potentially be quite significant.
Yes, yeah.
Dollar value.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to add a touch of context there too, so Charlottetown does have a non-resident tax rate.
Yes, they do.
For a residential tax rate, which is double.
Yeah.
And the province of PEI has a $1.50 higher tax rate for non-residents. Some other municipalities, I know Vancouver has what they call an empty homes tax, but it's essentially the same types of thing. Yeah, and I think as Councillor MacDougall said, we sort of want to see is this one of the, we don't want committees to go do work that, and council be like, no, it's, we
Yeah.
have no interest in even exploring it, so this is the exploratory, the feeler.
Right, it's basically a feeler to get council's thoughts on what we're doing, because we do have to shake every branch for revenue, and this is one that we thought is not going to affect your local residents, right? So.
And it's Miss
Yes, that's, yeah, right. Councillor.
Yeah, so my question is just, so I'm assuming then you're doing it on residential homes and vacant land that's zoned residential? Would that
Yes.
be,
I would, all non-commercial, yeah,
so it could be vacant land also?
yes.
Okay.
To add to that, and maybe we're not at the stage yet, but would it include rental units? Because the owner might pass the increased tax on to his or her.
And those are, yeah,
It would, or it would at this time.
yeah, and,
Mr. Chair,
yes,
could I make sure?
yeah, go ahead.
I just want to ask, in those discussions, I can't remember, if it's just non-commercial, was there any discussion around anything commercial?
Not
you
at this, not,
No?
not at this time, yeah. Anybody else?
Kristen, do you have anything to add sort of as well?
Okay. Thanks, everyone, and we'll have some more discussion on that at a later date. Thanks.
So Councillor MacDougall, just to read in the room too there, just Finance Committee is going to continue to explore it and come back with the more
Yeah.
robust options and
Yeah,
recommendations.
is everybody okay with that, which way we're going? And there's, we'll move forward with it, move it back to Finance Committee, have some more discussion on it, and do some background work on it and bring something forward to council at a later date. Okay?
Thank you, Councillor. Item 11, storm, water, ditch, infill, Deputy Mayor Snow, request that this be put on.
Thank you, Your Worship. I requested to be put on after you cut me off and wouldn't let me talk last meeting, but that's so. And basically, it's just for clarity, I guess. Myself and Councillor Duran, who chaired the stormwater ditch infill committee, have put time and effort and work into this, and I think staff and so on has done the same, and the public has done the same by attending the public meeting we initially organized, and then a secondary meeting that was put on by Councillor MacDougall and Councillor Adams. And I guess putting it off to a later meeting, I'm curious as to what we're either hoping to achieve by doing so, what we're looking at, because as one member of the committee, I've not heard anything about it. I didn't hear anything about it being put off prior to that meeting that night, so I was initially a little taken back as being one of the committee chairs, how maybe that information wasn't shared, like we're looking to put it off for X reason, which I could have easily supported. But I just don't know what, if anything, we can achieve in the timeframes that we have by just putting it off. And if we continue to put it off and push it down, I guess we're not addressing the issue that we initially started to try to address.
If I could respond?
Yep.
we put it off until our monthly meeting this month, and Councillor Adams and myself wanted to meet with with you and Councillor Drawn to discuss a lot of the things that come up at our meeting, and we were planning on doing it the last week or two, but you've been away, I've been away, she's been away, and so I would like to get together this week if possible, or we need to get together before our next meeting, because like I said, we'll put it to bed on the meeting and our monthly meeting. I just want to have some more conversation around it so that we're all on the same.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm 100% fine with that. I just making
Yeah.
sure, or if there's
Yeah.
anything you require from Justin or myself.
No, we-
Prior to that, or, I'm just
Yeah,
wanting to make
yeah,
sure that we don't
No,
waste the time and opportunity or what's in
No.
front of us with the work already done, so.
no, and go ahead.
I guess, so residents of mine that were there, got, to inform some other people, rather than me having to do it all the time. It's great. They were sort of like talking amongst each other. And this is just an example of why it needs to be looked at how we are doing it. Somebody replied, somebody that was there said, these are your options, and it was word for word what was given in the handout. Somebody replied, I'd love to have my ditch filled in. I'm just not sure how they can justify $6,000 to fill them. I had a company come and give me a quote last year. Their quote included putting in the joiners to existing culvert to join the steel to the plastic culvert, and he was going to seal it tight, fill it in, and level it off for $1,800. He said, easy, one-day job. But when they contacted Summerside City staff, they said it didn't meet their guidelines, so they sent their guy, and he said $6,000. So this makes no sense since they've been here 7 years and never seen water in the ditch yet. So and this person's like on a hill, so everything runs down. So that's an example of how we do it has to be looked at. You have all these contractors that are coming and looking at people's ditches and saying, we can do it for a fraction of what you're being told it has to be done like. So there's a middle ground that has to be reached somewhere. And the way we're doing it, the funny thing is that if we put in a sidewalk and fill the ditch gets filled cheaper than if we just fill a ditch. So there's different criteria depending on the reasoning why we're filling the ditch. Do you know what I mean? Like there's.
No, I totally do. I guess my point is, I think we've gone through, we've asked staff to bring back options. They've brought back the options. We have laid those options on the table to vote on. And it's very easy to say, we don't want option A, B, or C, keep going. I think all the options have been, and Councillor Drawn, feel free to chime in. I actually had forgot that I asked to have this on the agenda. But
You did say you wanted to fight tonight, so.
yeah. It's a good night to fight. But the options are there. We can easily, as council, say, you know what? None of those options are good. We're going to continue doing the way we have. I think as a committee, we have been very comfortable with the options that have come forward and what the recommendation we brought forward. We're more than welcome to sit down, but let's get this to the next step and vote on it and decide what we are going to do moving forward, because I think, and all those, your points are very valid. I'm not an engineer and I don't know. I mean, I could go fill a ditch quite easily and fill her in and put some seed over. I don't know if that's going to affect everything else we have going on in our city. That being said, I'm sure there's other options out there that we possibly do, but right now the options we have on the table are what have come forward from the committee. So we aren't going to please everybody. I'll be honest, and I said this, I think, and I don't know how well it was received by residents, but neither one of those meetings were well attended. And I think that has to be noted. It is an issue for some. I don't know if it's as big of an issue as the time we put into it as counselors and the amount of fighting me and you do, Bruce, and,
Or
you
the
know,
calls they
arguing,
receive.
or, like, I just, we need to, for certain individuals, it's a major issue, just like other sidewalks and curbs are a major issue. So we have to put it into perspective and move forward.
But I guess what residents were saying coming out of that was that they all have different scenarios about how big their ditches are, how long their frontage is, and so on. So everybody's going to have a different price depending on if we keep doing it at the rate we're doing. And it's very, very confusing whenever we're told we have to do it this way and keep it to a certain standard, but then you talk to staff and one person says, well, the staff don't even agree how it should be done.
Right.
And that's where it's like, guys, go back to the drawing board, because staff individually are telling us that this is gonna work and this isn't gonna work and this isn't and this is. And the most expensive route is the one that's being chosen. Like, why not? And listen, if every ditch, like around me gets filled, it's gonna be me that ends up with all the water, cause I'm at the bottom of the hill. So I want it done right, but at the same time, nobody that's been contacted to come out and look. And there's people that have filled their own ditches, and the city's been none the wiser. And I'm gonna tell you, in those areas, there has not been one issue with water. So.
And again, I think that's a staff-related operations type issue that I think they have to figure out. Policy-wise, we have to figure out how we are moving forward. This has been put on specifically due to expense moving forward, the cost, how we can continue doing what we're doing, which I think we've all sort of agreed that the past practice just is no longer financially feasible moving forward. We've let the public know that, we've gone through that process. I just would hate to get this far and then muddy the water again and let all that work go off.
I think the best thing for the committee to do is to meet with us in the next few days, and I think we can hammer some things out here. Anyway, that's what I would recommend. But
Councillor McColeman?
Oh, sorry. Can I just say, I have no problem with us meeting. I am, just as one committee chair, co-chair, I'm very confident with what we've brought forward as a recommendation.
It's not a
Sorry, well,
recommend.
I'm just
it's
gonna
not-
let Councillor McColeman go,
Or I-
because,
I
yeah, I
think
don't wanna get into a big debate about ditches here today. The whole point of empowering the committee members were to go, to work with staff, to reach out to the public, to receive comments, to give councillors the opportunity to provide feedback. The two co-chairs are to come to council and put their recommendation to a vote. My intent is to put the recommendation that the committee brings forward, whatever that is, to a vote at the next council meeting. The other options are to put all the items, the options forward to a vote. They do nothing, the no ditches ever, or the recommendation. But we're going to go to a vote next week, or at the next council meeting, and if people want to vote against it, they can. If they want to communicate and discuss with the co-chairs about what that recommendation is, they can. If they want to put on the floor an alternate recommendation, they can do that as well. But I think the hope is we will, there's always the opportunity to ask for a postponement like we did the last time, and council will vote on it, but we're going to get to a vote at the next meeting. And if there is work to be done, the work to be done is not here right now, but is with the two committee chairs to bring forward their recommendation, and that's what I'm hoping we get to. I just don't want to get back into we're into the details on the ditches discussion, because it is 7:33 and it is game one.
so,
But if I may,
Yes.
I was just waiting
Councillor?
for Councillor Duran as the chair.
yeah, no, there's nothing I really need to add tonight, so no, I won't prolong it. Yeah,
Okay.
no.
May I? I have to, because I wanted to speak to it the night that it happened. And I know that you had indicated, Your Worship, that it was a procedural bylaw where the chair and co-chair were not able to speak on it. But I guess what I want to say is, I'm sure we all take it very seriously when a special committee is appointed to do some task that we need additional work on. And I really respect Councillor Duran and Councillor Corey, as I know all council does, for the work that you did put into it. And as you've mentioned, Your Worship, a lot of time went into it with the groundwork and speaking to staff and whatnot. I think for me, where I felt that around that one aspect of it, I really felt that by not hearing from the chairs that night would have made a difference in how we were voting. Because for me, I did not expect it to be that the chairs would say, vote nay. And I felt that that was sending us a very loud message from both chairs, that they felt that we should proceed based on the work that was done and put together or whatnot. So I guess I'm saying all of that is, when somebody is in that role, it's a hard role, and they're still trying to be a fellow councillor, but they're also taking time aside to work on a special task. And I think it's hard enough trying to get through all of that mud of all of the details. And I think we owe it to the chair and vice chair when they bring something forth. I think that we as a council really need to do some second sober thought on, they're bringing 3 options. And I thought they were fair options. They weren't trying to tell us what to do. And I think we did present ample opportunity for residents to come forward. But people do have their own decision to make to come to those meetings. And I think if the staff gave that pricing, I think they're doing that based on the city's policies and recommendations. So for me, I found that a little bit troubling, the way that night unfolded. And I needed to speak that to all of you as a council. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Adams, your light's on.
Oh, yeah, we have to look at the pricing, that's all there is to it. And there's nothing against the recommendations, it's not the recommendations, it's the pricing if you go with those recommendations. Like, it's not right, it needs to be looked at, and that's all I'll say on it.
And I'll be very quick. The staff, how involved were the staff on it? And the reason I'm asking that is because I went upstairs a couple of weeks ago, and I had asked somebody, and they didn't even know what I was talking about, and does not recommend that at all. Anyway, let's have a conversation in a couple of days. So I'm not sure how involved staff were in the committee, so thanks.
There'll be an opportunity for councillors to have a discussion when the committee brings this forward for a vote, and they can say their piece or provide their agreements or disagreements, and then council can vote, like I said, unless someone puts forward another motion to postpone, which that's why I had to cut you off, Councillor Snow, because once there is a motion to postpone and it is voted, that's at the end of the discussion. So I look forward to the next council meeting, and we'll make sure to leave sufficient amount of time for the vibrant and lively debate and discussion on stormwater ditch infill. We can move to item 12, update Errol Thompson Park, Centennial Park, Councillor MacDougall.
Come here. This was an item I put on, and I got an email back on it, but I can't find it now. But apparently this was work that was supposed to be done last fall, and then Fiona hit and took all our workers. So then I've been looking for it all summer, and the residents was asking me the other day again, so I asked to have it on here. But it's my understanding that it's in the works, is supposed to be completed this fall. So think that's all we need to do on that one, so. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor, and that's the playground equipment?
The playground, yes, there was, and there's the old wading pool is supposed to be taken out. It's not being used, and there's some new tots, playground equipment that's supposed to go in there, so. And I did receive a call from a resident about the seats on, it's in Centennial Park. The swing seats are blue, and all the blue is coming off on the children's clothes, so just pass that along too.
Certainly not the biggest concern for children's clothes, at least my
Yeah.
children. They're blue, ripped, dirty, clean, who knows? But yes, thank you for sharing that, and pass that along
Thank
to Trent and his crew, because I know they're very diligent in keeping our parks to a great standard here in the community. The last item which was added to the agenda was the floor area ratio. We had a brief discussion about it, and it was, we can continue that discussion now, or we can send it to Standing Committee and Planning Board to come back forward with recommendations to look at what the current FAR is, and if that needs to be increased, either as a standalone or as part of the official plan process. As well, I did read an initial draft from the Housing Task Force recommendations today. I would expect floor area ratio will be coming forward there as well. It was just a coincidental, as it was noted.
I was just wondering if we are discussing that why would we not go the standard that everybody else uses is the square footage, lot square footage or whatever. Just a thought, they could look at that.
Yeah, I think the planning board would look at what the options are and what it is, and what the numbers are in different places, and what the objectives, what you get with different types of floor area ratio or units to lot size ratio. Yeah, absolutely, and it's okay to be more progressive and more forward thinking than some of our neighbors, so we can look at that too when we go about it. So planning board, standing committee does have a number of things on their internal agenda here, so they can review that and bring that back with recommendations to committee of the whole. Make sense? Okay, we will adjourn this committee of the whole meeting. If everyone's okay, we'll just immediately jump right into the special council meeting. So I'll just call to order the special council meeting on October 3rd, 2023 here in the city of Summerside. Call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented at the bottom of your large agenda package. Councillor Morrison, seconded. Councillor Adams. I'm just going to do any opposed. Hearing none, we'll move on to item 3, conflict of interest declaration. Any conflicts of interest with respect to any of the items on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to item 4, and this is where we'll hand it over to Councillor Duran. Councillor Duran.
Okay, thank you once again, Your Worship. 2 resolutions, I believe, this evening. Just looking for the title. 26, 20.
Disposition?
Yeah, I just
Councillor
wanted to
Duran,
get
I
the-
actually have
the
them here.
address. Oh, okay.
Want me to proceed to read them?
Go for it. I'll watch this time around.
They're in front of me.
I'll listen to it, sure.
All right, tonight we have the first reading of bylaws CS-38, disposition of PIDs 309-690, 309-780, 309-682, and 309-674. These are properties located in the core block area. As per the Municipal Government Act, the bylaw is made valid if A, it is read and formally approved by the majority of the council members present and voting on 2 occasions at meetings of the council held on different days. The planned meetings for that to happen is at this meeting and then the October monthly meeting, October 16th. B, copies of the bylaw were made available as part of the meeting package that was posted Friday on our website, and copies are available this evening, so there's no requirement to read the bylaw into the record. So we'll start with Resolution COS 23-129, moved by myself, Councillor Snow, and seconded by Councillor Norman McColeman. Whereas pursuant to Municipal Government Act Sections 143 and 158, Summerside City Council is required to pass a bylaw when land is transferred below fair market value. Be it resolved that CS-38 disposition of PIDs 309690, 309780, 309682, and 309674 bylaw be hereby read a first time. And the bylaw is attached.
Thank you, Councillor Snow. So I'll call for a vote on the resolution COS 23-129, moved by Councillor Snow, seconded by Councillor McColeman. The resolution's on the floor. Are there any comments from council? Hearing none, all in favor of said resolution, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution COS 23-129 is carried unanimously. Councillor Snow, are you going to continue with the next one?
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you.
Resolution COS 23-130, moved by Councillor Norman McColeman and seconded by myself, Councillor Corey Snow. Whereas pursuant to Municipal Government Act Section 143 and 158, Summerside City Council is required to pass a bylaw when land is transferred below fair market value. And whereas CS-38 disposition of PIDs 309690, 309780, 309682, and 309674 bylaw was read a first time at this council meeting. Be it resolved that CS-38 disposition of PIDs 309690, 309780, 309682, and 309674 bylaw be hereby declared read a first time and approved at this council meeting.
Resolution COS 23-130, moved by Councillor McColeman, seconded by Councillor Snows on the floor. Any comments from council? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, resolution COS 23-130 is carried unanimously. With that, that is the end of our special council meeting, so we will adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your participation as always.